Welcome to Module 7 of the GRR Technical Training Series. Module Aim and Reminders. This module discusses the remaining management requirements of the GRR not covered specifically in other modules. These requirements are Requirement R3, Early Engagement, Requirement R4, Engagement with local communities and others, Requirement R5, Environmental Safety Culture and Management System, and Requirement R6, Preservation of Knowledge and Records at the time of release from Radioactive Substances Regulation. This is the 7th GRR Technical Training module out of 8 in total. Before we discuss the remaining management requirements in more detail, it is worth just reminding ourselves about a few basic points. The GRR stands for the Management of Radioactive Waste from Decommissioning of Nuclear Sites, Guidance on Requirements for Release from Radioactive Substances Regulation, which was published in July 2018. The guidance is available on the SEPA website and can also be accessed via a summary on gov.uk. We use the term Radioactive Substances Regulation to cover the relevant legislation, which is different in Scotland from that in England and Wales. Although the legislation differs in detail, it shares common aims. We have written the GRR to fulfil those aims. Finally, please remember that the GRR applies to all stages of a nuclear site's life cycle and that all the requirements of the GRR need to be addressed for the final surrender of a site's permit. GRR structure. This slide is a reminder of how the GRR is structured. Requirements are grouped into management requirements and technical requirements. If the operator's plans for decommissioning and cleanup meet the requirements, then the 5 principles will be satisfied, and consequently, the fundamental protection objective of the GRR will be achieved. There are a total of 6 management requirements, shown in yellow in this figure. Requirement R1, Optimization of Waste Management Options, covered in Module 2. Requirement R2, Waste Management Plan, covered in Module 3. And the 4 management requirements, R3 to R6, that are covered in this module. Management requirements R3 to R6. So, what are these management requirements? Requirement R3 states that operators should engage as early as possible with the relevant Environment Agency. Requirement R4 states that operators should engage with local communities, ONR, the Planning Authority, other interested parties and the public on their Developing Waste Management Plan and Site-Wide Environmental Safety Case, or SWESC. Requirement R5 states that operators should maintain a positive environmental safety culture and management system. And Requirement R6 states that operators shall retain adequate records up to the site reference state being achieved. Requirement R3. Requirement R3 states that operators should engage as early as possible with the relevant Environment Agency on their proposals for decommissioning and cleanup before they make any formal applications. We consider that early engagement can provide a number of significant benefits for both operators and the environment agencies. It helps ensure sufficient attention is focused on regulatory requirements in the early planning stages. We can comment on any proposals, for example for on-site disposals, and give early advice on possible environmental concerns. However, it should be noted that we cannot provide regulatory certainty before formal applications are received. Early engagement could benefit operators in their discussions with land use planning authorities. The environment agencies are consultees under the planning regime, and therefore knowledge of and confidence in operators' plans will assist us in making our responses to the planning authorities. Early engagement would also encourage open discussion of operators' proposals and the regulators' views with stakeholders such as local communities in advance of any formal consultation required by the application process. Requirement R4. Requirement R4 states that operators should engage with local communities, the Office for Nuclear Regulation, the Planning Authority, other interested parties, and the public on their Developing Waste Management Plan and SWESC. We expect operators to engage widely about their Developing Waste Management Plan and SWESC, where sites are located immediately adjacent to another nuclear site. This includes operators engaging with each other in the development of their waste management plan and SWESC. We will now highlight a couple of examples of the sort of engagement with external organisations that we expect to occur. The first example concerns engagement with the ONR. Engagement with the ONR during the development of the Waste Management Plan and SWESC will be particularly important because of ONR's regulatory interests in matters that will be addressed by those outputs. For example, safety may be a major consideration in the optimisation process for radioactive wastes, and ONR's responsibility for the prevention and management of contamination of ground and groundwater by radioactive substances are directly relevant to the Waste Management Plan and SWESC. Additionally, ONR has indicated that the SWESC may provide a suitable vehicle for the safety cases that the operator is required to maintain under nuclear safety legislation, provided that it can be clearly identified as such and meets the requirements of ONR guidance. Therefore, conversations with the ONR on the developing SWESC may offer benefits for site operators. The second example concerns engagement with the planning authorities. We strongly encourage the operator to discuss their waste management plan with their local planning authority as early as practicable. This is because proposals for managing and disposing of radioactive waste on a nuclear site may require planning permission under the Town and Country Planning Act 1990 in England and Wales, or the Town and Country Planning Scotland Act 1997 in Scotland. Requirement R5. Requirement R5 states that operators should maintain a positive environmental safety culture appropriate to the activities being undertaken on site and should have a management system, organisational structure, and resources sufficient to provide the following functions: planning and control of work, the application of sound science and good engineering practice, commissioning of appropriate research and development, provision of information, documentation and record keeping, and quality management. Whilst the permit is in place, it will specify the requirement for operators to develop and maintain an effective management system. This management system should be progressively adapted throughout the life cycle of the nuclear site to ensure suitable corporate governance of the organisation until release from radioactive substances regulation. The written management arrangements supporting the management system should show how environmental safety is directed and controlled. They should also show how the management system is kept live through regular review, progressive updating, and implementation of the management arrangements. These arrangements should provide a level of control proportionate to the hazard. Requirement R6. Requirement R6 states that operators shall manage and retain adequate records of their site's journey to completion of all planned work involving radioactive substances, and also, where necessary, provide adequate records of the controls applied up to the site reference date being achieved, along with the required validation monitoring data. Operators should provide these records in a form suitable for long-term preservation and access, and should propose arrangements for the long-term safekeeping and management of the records. After release from regulation, neither the former operator nor the relevant environment agency can reasonably be expected to assume continuing responsibility for any matters relating to the permit. However, prior to the release from radioactive substances regulation, operators should ensure appropriate archiving of records. We expect operators to take all reasonable steps to ensure that such records will be preserved and consider making appropriate use of the National Nuclear Archive. Relevant records will encompass but will not necessarily be limited to the radiological hazards presented by the radioactive waste and contamination, including radionuclide inventory, the chemical and physical form of the radioactive substances, and the specific manner of the disposal of the waste. The non-radiological hazards presented by the radioactive substances, supported by appropriate details similar to those for the radiological hazards. Any physical measures provided to prevent or reduce the chances or consequences of future inadvertent human intrusion. Any uncertainties that may be of significance in interpreting and using the data recorded. In the records preserved, operators should take account of relevant standards, guidance, and codes of practice that are applicable at the time of release from regulation, so that the records can continue to be interpreted in the future. Finally, there should be no requirement for reliance on knowledge held by individuals. All required knowledge should be captured within the record set. Next steps. This module has covered the 4 management requirements not specifically covered in other modules in this series. These were Requirement R3, Early Engagement, Requirement R4, Engagement with local communities and others, Requirement R5, Environmental Safety Culture and Management System, and Requirement R6, Preservation of Knowledge and Records at the time of release from Radioactive Substances Regulation. While all training modules are designed to be viewed independently, we suggest that Module 8, Permitting and Surrender, is viewed next. Thank you.